So we are starting with the first standard of ethics today, which is professionalism. There are in total how many standards? 17? 7 standards. So there are total 7 standards, and each of the standards will have subparts. Okay, so professionalism is further broken down into 4 parts. So we have 1A, so that's how we reference it. 1 is professionalism, 1A is knowledge of law. Now today's discussion is purely focused on 1A. For each substandard, the videos, I would be breaking them down into 3 parts. Okay, so there would be part 1 of the video, part 2 and part 3. The first part will have elaborated discussion on what the standard really means. Okay, so each of the standard covers different ifs and buts scenario. So all those will be covered in one. In part 2 of the standard, we will discuss part 2 of the video, we will discuss examples. Okay, so in these examples, we will learn how these standards get applied in a real world scenario. And then part 3 of these videos, we will have discussion on certain questions so that you will get to apply and you will get to understand how subjective the questions could be. Okay, so your preparation strategy for ethics is watch part 1 videos extremely carefully. Now when you're watching the videos, try to make notes so that when you revise, you would simply revise from your notes. So these videos will have plenty of flowcharts, try to write them down, and then do part 2 and part 3 of the videos and see if you can apply them. Okay, so let us start with knowledge of law. This section, we would be breaking it down into 4 parts. The first part is code of standards versus law. So what do you think? What is code of standards versus law? Yeah, I'm asking you. I can't ask you? Yeah. So code of standards versus law.
When the code of standards is given by CFA and the law clashes, which one should be go by?
Correct. So she said, what if the code of standards which are applicable to CFA Institute members and candidates are not in agreement with the law? Okay, then what should be the code of conduct in that scenario? What do you think of violation by others?
If he is violating the rules and regulation of the CFA Institute, then we have to escalate that things to CFA Institute.
So why did you say she? I mean, why only? Okay. Yes, so violation by others, what it says is you're working in a team and someone else, you get to know that someone else is in violation of law or code of standards, then what should you do in those type of scenarios? Investment products and applicable laws. So you're making an investment product in US, you're selling that all over the world. Then in that case, how do you take care of the laws where the products are being sold? So those scenarios would be considered here. And in the 4th scenario, we will look at some of the recommended procedure. Okay. Now, since all of you are doing ethics for the first time, I want you to appreciate that there would be certain sections in the syllabus which would be required and certain sections in the syllabus which would be recommended. Okay. Now, for example, required could be something like this, that you should maintain records with the client communication for 7 years. Okay, which means if you guys are my clients and then whatever communication that I have with you, I will maintain those records for 7 years. Recommended might say, I don't know if they say, but they might say that let's say you should maintain for 12 years. Okay, so if someone maintains record only for 7 years, then is he in violation of CFA Code of Ethics? No. So what is required is the minimum that you're supposed to do. What is recommended is, it is good to do, but it is not compulsory. Are you following this? So code of standards versus law, violation by others, products, and the recommended procedure. Let us start with the code of standards. In fact, the main sentence of this standard first. Members. Who are members? CFA chartered holders. The ones who have passed all the 3 exams, they have completed their work experience requirement, and then they have applied to the membership of the CFA Institute. So every time in my presentations, when you see members, you're supposed to read members and candidates. Okay, so I'm just trying to save space. and make it less wordy, but it is applicable to members. It is also applicable to candidates. Who are candidates? The ones who have enrolled for the examinations. So members must understand and comply with the laws, rules and regulations of the government and regulatory organization. Okay, so now what does it mean? You are supposed to know the laws of your country. That's one. Second, if there is a professional body which is governing your activity. For example, if you are a mutual fund distributor in India, then there is a body called AMFI, Association of Mutual Funds of India. Then that body will govern your activity. Okay, or SEBI in India will govern your activity. SEBI is Securities and Exchange Board. In US, your activities would be governed by US SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. Then you are not only supposed to know laws, but you are also supposed to know rules of these governing bodies. Are we together? Moving on now. So the first section, a generic sentence here which says members and candidates must comply with all the applicable laws. When applicable law, so this is the core part of this standard, when applicable law and conduct requires and code and standards require different conduct, candidate must follow the more stricter of the applicable law or code of standards. Okay, what does it mean? It means, let us say you are staying in a country X. Okay, what country X says is that if you're in an investment advisory business, if you're recommending your clients to buy and sell certain securities, then you should maintain books of account, maintain the record with the clients, let us say for 3 years. However, CFA Institute Code of Standards, they require you to maintain books of account for 7 years. So then out of these two, which one is more strict? 7 years. So then we will follow for 7 years. Okay, one more example. Let us say that you operate in country X and it says it is okay to apply shares for yourself in oversubscribed IPO. Okay, so IPOs is initial public offer. Oversubscribed means there are more subscribers and less number of shares to be issued. And typically when the IPOs are oversubscribed, we can expect that the prices will increase once the shares are listed. So how it works in investment world is that an investment bank will apply for this IPO for all its clients together. Okay, so let us say they have applied and they have received 100,000 shares. Now, as a fund manager or an analyst, you understand that the moment the shares get listed, the prices are going to increase. So then the temptation would be that let us apply some of those shares to our account first and maybe to client's account. Are you following this? There are total 100,000 shares which the firm is receiving. So for example, I am the firm, you guys are my clients. So then should I also take 10,000 out of those shares for myself, or should I give those shares, should I just assign them to client's account? Are you following this? So maybe country X says it is okay for the analyst to assign those shares to himself, but the code says no, you should first assign them to clients, and then the last hierarchy would be that you should assign them to your own employees. Okay, so again, which one of these is more strict? Code of standards. So then we'll follow code of standards. However, if the law is more strict, then we will follow law. Okay, so what we will do is we will find out which one of them is more strict, and then we will simply comply with the stricter law. Yes. Yeah, that's an interesting one. What he said is that let's say you are in possession of some material information, material non-public information. Okay, in simple language it means insider information. Okay, so what code of standards says is you cannot act on that information. So if you have access to some information and if you trade on that, then you're in violation. But what if the law says that if you have that information and law says you're required to report it to the regulator? So to give you an example, let's say we have a client and that client has conducted some illegal activity. Okay, Now the courts do not require us to go to the regulators and report it. Okay, but the law might require us. So in that case, what is more strict? Law. Because law is asking us to take certain set of actions. So then you simply follow the one which is more strict. Now, members and candidate must not engage in any conduct that constitutes a violation, even if it's otherwise considered legal. So again, the same example. You're staying in country X. Country X says trading on insider information is okay. Insider information means material price sensitive information. However, the code says that it is not okay. So then even if this activity is legal by code of standards, the ethical standards, you would not be allowed to trade on that information. Are we together here? In the absence of any law, simply stick to be in compliance with the code of standards. So if there are no laws at all, for example, in India, we do not have very strict law on the disclosure of the performance of fund management. For example, I have a wealth advisory. Okay, my business is to take money from clients and then invest that on behalf of them. Now, how do you show my performance to my clients? That means you guys are my clients, you come to me. I tell you that last year I was able to earn 20% return for my clients. Previous to that, I was able to earn 25%. But maybe that 20% is not the correct number. Maybe I am manipulating a little. So Indian laws are little not strict on that front. But then we have code of standards which tell us how to calculate. So if there is no law, then simply be in compliance with the code and standards. Now what they have done is in the CFA curriculum, which is the official text, they have given 7 to 8 different scenarios, and they have asked us to decide that what should be the action based on those scenarios. So what I want you to know is this: they will be using terms NS, then LS, then ethics and MS. NS would mean no securities law. Okay. LS would mean less strict. Then ethics and then MS would mean most strict. Okay, so you have to remember this sequence. Now, in each of the scenario, we will have to take two decisions. One, what is applicable? Okay, so we will have to decide what is applicable, and second, we will have to decide what should be followed. Now, what is applicable? Most of the time it would be given in the question. What is applicable? But what to follow? The rule is, if NS is applicable, then follow ethics. Can you tell me why? When NS is applicable, follow ethics. Why? Because ethics is more strict. When LS is applicable, follow ethics, because it is more strict. But when MS is applicable, then we will follow MS, because it is more strict. That is the idea. So for each of the scenario, we will first decide what is applicable, and then we will decide what is to be followed. Now, first scenario. So I want you guys to tell me what is applicable here. It says member resides in NS. NS is no laws. So he's saying in a NS country, he's doing business in LS. LS means less strict. LS applies. So the question has explicitly given us that the LS applies. But what should we follow? We should follow ethics, because ethics are more stricter than LS. Are you following this? Second one. So member resides in LS. He's doing business in NS. Tell me what should be, and it says LS applies. So what is applicable is LS. But what should we follow? Ethics again. Are we together on this?
But if he follows LS, that is also okay.
If he follows LS, no, it will not be okay. Why? Because LS is less strict than the ethics. So the idea is law or the ethics, whichever is more stricter. Is that okay? Next one. So what is applicable? Member resides in NS. He's doing business in MS. So in the question they have said MS is applicable. What should we follow now? सोच के बोलो थोड़ा सा. What should we follow now? Are you sure? Yes, because MS is more strict than the code of ethics. So here we will follow MS. Next one. Now we just look at what is applicable. What is applicable here? MS. So what should we follow? MS. Next one. So member resides in LS. He's doing business in LS. LS applies. Okay. But it states a locality where business is conducted governs. So now the LS says that the locality in which business is done, that is applicable. Okay, so where is the business being done? NS. So what is applicable? NS. But then what should we follow? We should follow ethics. Why? Because ethics is more stricter. Next one. Read this carefully. Tell me what is applicable. Correct. So it says law of locality where business is conducted governs. Business is conducted where? MS. So what is applicable? MS. And what should we follow? MS again. Yes. Tell me what is applicable. What should we follow? So it clearly says MS is applicable. And then what do we follow? MS. Last one. What is applicable? What should we follow? And what should we follow? We will follow ethics. Is that okay? Should we go ahead? Now the second part, it is about violation of others. The simple idea here is, there are two things you need to know. One, that if you're working in a team and if you get to know that there is a violation, the first thing that you should do, of course you should report to your supervisor and all those things, but the most important thing is disassociate. That means it's like you find a friend and you get to know that he is involved in some sort of activity. Then you tell him that okay, we are not friends anymore. So this is a corporate version of that, where you're working in a group and you get to know some guys are violating code of standards. Then you simply decide that I am not going to work on this project anymore. You disassociate yourself from the activity. Are we okay? And number two that you want to remember is that inaction with knowledge is considered as participation. That means I get to know that you guys are involved in some activities, but I decide to ignore. If I decide to ignore, as per the code of standards, I will also be considered as violation in code of ethics. Okay, as long as you know these two things, you should be fine with this section. So let's read through this. Members are presumed to have knowledge of all applicable laws. So it works like this. Let's say that you are drunk and you're driving. Why? So you get caught by the police and he says that you're in violation. Now he's going to, let's say, send you to jail for a month. You cannot argue saying that mujhe pata nahi tha. You cannot say that I did not know this. Okay. So if you're working in this industry, you're supposed to have knowledge of all the relevant law. Your defense can never be, you can never defend yourself by saying I was not aware of it. You're supposed to be aware of it. This is interesting. However, CFA Institute acknowledge that members may not recognize violation if they are not aware of the facts giving rise to the violation. So there is a difference. If you are not aware of the law, that's your problem. But if you're not aware of the fact, then it's fine. For example, you guys are doing something, but I don't know it. We are working in the same group, we are working in the same team, but you guys are smart enough to hide it from me. Okay. So if that is the case, if you are not aware of the facts, that's perfectly fine. Are we together on this? Next one. If member believes that eminent or ongoing client activities are illegal, then you have to follow these steps. So if you get to know that someone is doing wrong, then what do you do? Step number 1, go and talk to that guy and tell him that what he is doing is currently in violation of code of standards, or maybe it's illegal. Step number 2, go to your supervisor. Now in this step, you can also go to the legal counsel. Okay, so most of the investment banks, they will have a separate legal division there. So you can go to the legal counsel, you can tell them, see, this is what is happening, what should be done. Okay. Now step number 3, step away and disassociate. So if you just do first 2, but if you still remain in the group, you are still in violation of code of standards. Are we okay here? So it is important that you disassociate yourself from the activity. Okay. Now they've given certain examples of how do you disassociate. So you can ask them that do not write my name on the report. So if we are collectively preparing an equity research report, you can tell them, please remove my name from the report. Or you can tell them, I don't want to work on this client anymore, give me a different assignment. Or you can simply refuse to accept a new client. Okay, these are some of the examples. Inaction combined with continuing association with those involved in illegal conduct may be construed as participation. So which means I get to know that you guys are doing certain activity illegally. Okay. Now, even in that case, I am not doing it, you people are doing it, but I still keep on working with you. So inaction with continuing association, I am in violation of code of standards because it is construed as participation. And institute encourages. They have used the word encourages, not requires. Understand the difference. So it encourages members and candidates to report potential violations. So if you've done something illegal, if I go and report that to SEBI, the regulator in India, it's a good practice. But is it mandatory for me to report? No, because it says encourages. It is a recommended practice, not a required practice. Are we okay? Yeah.
So suppose we both are colleagues, you are a CFA holder and I am not. And maybe I break some ethics or code of conduct. So in that case, I am not binding for because I am not a CFA.
Yeah. So that's a good one. What he is saying now, that we two are colleagues. I am a CFA chartered holder, he is not. And he is currently involved in some violation. Okay. So are ethics applicable to him? No. But if I am your supervisor, it is my responsibility that the code of ethics are followed in my organization. Okay. And even if the code of ethics are not applicable to you, the law will still be applicable to you. And then if you are in violation of law, then automatically everything becomes applicable. Is it okay? Now see this. A failure to report is less likely to be construed as a violation. So you guys are doing something wrong. I do not go to the regulator. It is fine. But if I fail to disassociate myself, then it would definitely be considered as a violation. So not going to regulator is okay, but not disassociating from a violation is not okay. Are we together on this? Next one, products and applicable laws. Members involved in creating investment products should be mindful of where these products will be sold as well as their places of origin. So a simple example. In Arab countries, there is this concept of Islamic investments. Have you heard of this earlier? What does it mean?
They don't take loans.
Yeah. So Islamic investment is that certain type of investments will be prohibited. So to my limited understanding, you cannot invest in tobacco companies. You cannot invest in liquor companies. So that is a investment based on the Islamic laws. Okay. Now imagine I am a US fund manager, right? And some of my investment products are being sold in those parts of the world where the investors will like to follow this type of investment regime. Then as a member, I should be mindful of the fact that if I am selling the products there, And if my clients expect those products to be in compliance with Islamic laws, then I should make sure that I am in compliance with them. Is that okay? The applicable laws of the countries of origination and expected sale should be understood by those responsible for supervision of the services. So I am the supervisor of a particular fund. I am supervisor as in the immediate boss. You guys are fund managers. Okay, so it is my responsibility to ensure that if you're building the product in US laws are complied with. If you're selling the product in Asia, Asian laws are complied with. Is that okay? The last part now, recommended procedure. Number 1, stay informed. So one of the ways in keeping informed is memorandum distributed to employees for continuous education program. Example could be, now after 2008 was a big crisis. There were phenomenal changes in the legal structure for derivatives. Okay, now when these new laws were made applicable, then the employees of the investment bank, they should have kept themselves informed that these are the changes which are happening in the law. One way of doing it is just distribute maybe a small leaflet, 1-pager, 2-pager, which will have main provisions. Review procedure. Review firms' written compliance procedure on a regular basis. So every firm will have a written policy about how do they comply with law. So review that policy on a regular basis. Third, maintain current files. So if the regulations are changing, you should have the latest laws available in your office for your employees to access. Then develop or adopt a code of ethics. Now this point is extremely important. We do corporate training for a lot of investment banks, as in I go to these organizations and we have sessions on different topics. So last year when we were dealing with one of the investment bank, there's a vendor registration process. So we being the vendors, we were supposed to be registered with them. So that guy asked, please send us a copy of your code of ethics. So as in we being vendors, they expected us to have our own set of code of ethics for our employees and our operational. Okay, so every organization in theory is expected to have their own set of ethics. There's a very large hedge fund in US. I will avoid the name since we are recording the video, but one of the biggest hedge funds in the world right now. And there is an Indian IT company which provides them software services. Okay, so there was a team of 50 people, Indians, who were supposed to work on certain very sensitive aspects of that software, and they were supposed to be in the US in that hedge fund's office. Now what these guys did is, to each of the employee, when they went to that hedge fund, to each of the employee, they gave them their own ethics manual book, which was about 200 pages. Then all the employees for the first week were required to study that ethics manual, and then by the end of the week they were taken examination. And only those employees of Indian IT company who were able to pass that examination were allowed to work. Those people who did not pass ethics exam, they were required to write the exam one more time next week. So that is the level to which ethics is taken seriously, and it should be. Okay, because in the long run, I mean, we as investment bankers, if you would see the image in the minds of public, that's a little scarred right now, because people think we've made things difficult. So the more ethical we are, being a part of this industry, I think the more trust we'll be able to gather, and I think the industry by itself will be able to grow. And one of the reasons why CFA chartered holders get good jobs is because of the emphasis of Institute on Ethics. Then establish procedures for reporting violation. So if there is a violation, what should I do? So there should be a written protocol in my office. Step number 1, go to this guy and talk to him. Step number 2, do this. Distribution area laws. What it simply means is, if there is a new law, then that should be made available to all the employees. An example could be, in India, there are talks about the new real estate regulatory authority. Correct? So currently real estate is an unorganized market in our country. But if that new regulation comes, then all those laws should be distributed to the employees. Legal counsel. So if you're in doubt, just go and talk to this guy in your company. Disassociation. Now this is an important one, and it's a recommended procedure, not required. If you decide to disassociate, so you guys were doing something wrong, I decided to disassociate, then document the violation. Then I should write it down why I decided to disassociate, and then urge the firm to persuade the perpetrators to cease such conduct. So my company or the organization, they should persuade you to stop doing the activity which were otherwise considered unethical. Are we okay here?